sometimes the simplest ideas can have the biggest impact on the world. I'm here with Eli Beer, who is founder of the world's largest fully volunteer emergency medical response organization. It's called United Hatzalah. It's based in Israel, but it has revolutionized emergency care globally and continues to do so. The organization has approximately 6,000 volunteers in Israel alone and operates in close to 20 countries globally, some directly with United Hatzalah and others using the Hatzalah model in partnership. They've got active chapters in the United States, in Ukraine, in Colombia, in Panama. They're in talks with community and political leaders to open in Manchester in the UK. And there's some Hatzalah groups in London who operate using the Israeli model. Daily, the organization takes up to 1,600 calls, and annually they respond to well over 300,000. Eli's obviously, he's been the recipient of numerous awards for this innovative model, including Social Entrepreneur of Israel in 2010 at the World Economic Forum in Davos. He was the recipient of the 2013 Victor J. Goldberg IAE Prize for Peace in the Middle East and the Israel Presidential Volunteerism Award in 2011, among countless others. His TED-Med talk has more than 1.3 million views online, and a video that we're planning to play now by Naz Daily, who is an Israeli Arab vlogger, became the most viewed video about an Israeli non-profit within a week of being posted. I saw Eli speak earlier this year at my synagogue in North London, where the community was so inspired by his words that within 5 minutes of him finishing speaking, people had come forward to pledge more than £50,000 to the charity. And I'm delighted that he's agreed to come and speak with us today. And in the news today, actually, I saw that just this morning on his way to London for this trip, Eli began CPR on an 80-year-old Arab woman who collapsed in the airport. 80-year-old woman. So perhaps you could start, we'll start with the video, and then I was thinking Eli can tell us his story, what inspired him to set up the charity, and then I'll ask some questions, then we can open it up to other questions.
I'll sit here just for the video.
The following video is about a guy, who is the fastest to save your life. But first, let me tell you what the problem is. Imagine you're in a remote area. You get a heart attack and you call an ambulance. For that ambulance to get to you, it has to drive all the way through traffic and narrow streets. And by the time it gets there, you are dead. This is how millions of people die every year. Ambulances are just not fast enough, and that is scary. Then I met this guy.
Hi, my name is Eli Beer.
This guy found a unique way to solve the ambulance problem. Here is how. It's very simple. The ambulance is too big, so Eli used a motorcycle and called it an ambucycle. Instead of employees, Eli found volunteers, regular people just like you and me, the teacher, the engineer, and the student. He trained them for months, gave them medical supplies and an ambucycle.
Drive carefully.
And he let them go back to their normal life. And every time someone calls for help, his technology finds the closest volunteer that can help.
Think of it like Uber, but this is for free and we save lives.
They drop whatever they're doing, arrive on the scene, and give medical care until the big ambulance shows up. This is how the difference between life and death looks like.
The first 3 minutes are the most important to save a life.
Eli's system is so fast that any phone call is answered in 3 seconds or less. And show up in 3 minutes or less.
And in most cases, we show up in 90 seconds or less.
So by the time you spent watching this video, someone is already at your house saving your life. This is the fastest medical emergency service in the world and the cheapest because it's entirely free.
By the way, our team is 5,000 volunteers and it's all sponsored by donations.
It's an an organization that's 100% politics-free, 100% cost-free, 100% amazing, and 100%
Human.
people of different backgrounds volunteer to join Ellie's team of medics. The Jews, the Muslims, the Christians, and everyone else.
I love the fact that I'm sitting here in United Hatzalah in between an ultra-Orthodox Jew and a Muslim.
All of them dedicated their time to save others regardless of religion or race.
Hello, how are you? Shalom, shalom.
And overall, they saved over 3.5 million people.
When my own father had a heart attack, the first volunteer who came to save him was a Muslim volunteer who was nearby, and my father is Jewish.
My dad got a heart attack. The first person to help the fastest response was from a Jewish volunteer, and my dad is a Muslim.
What you're looking at is a group of people who came together under one organization called United Hatzalah to rise above politics, above money, above race, above religion, just to save lives.
It's an amazing video. I've never seen that before. Quite emotional.
Oh, you never saw that?
No, never saw that one.
Wow. Okay.
Anyway, I'll let Ellie give you some background as to why he started Hatzalah, how he started Hatzalah, and we can go from there.
So first of all, thanks for inviting me here. It's great to be with a bunch of lawyers. We're not charging $1,000 an hour to me. You know, it's like you're coming for free, which is amazing. In any case, I was on the way here this morning, and I felt terrific because I knew I'm going to speak here, and then I have an event tonight, a big gala. You're all invited. And when I was rushing to the airport this morning, it was incredible. I was sure I'm going to miss the flight. I took it's first time British Airways, and I usually take El Al. So in El Al, I could come whenever I want. They know me already, but in British they don't. So, and I came late. And when I was putting my stuff through the security, all of a sudden I hear someone screaming in the back. Like if you've ever been to El Al, to Ben Gurion Airport, the security right next to it, they have all the coffee shops there. And I hear from one of the little tables there, a woman is sitting down, and I hear a man screaming, "Mama, Mama," like he's screaming at her. So I thought he's hitting his mom. It looked weird. So I was like, I turn around to see what's going on, and I see him yelling, and I realize she's not responding. So I said to the security guys, all my stuff is out, my computer and everything. Just watch my stuff. I'm running out to help. I'm a paramedic. And they said, of course. And I just ran, and I see this woman standing still, not moving, and her son is trying to wake her up. And I look at her in 1 second, and I realize this woman had a heart attack, cardiac arrest. I said to the guy, help me put your mother carefully on the floor. And he's crying, and I put her on the floor. And I'm working on this woman. I started CPR. I broke her ribs because that's what happens when you start CPR on someone. And I say, call right away for emergency help for Hatzalah. And they called, they put a speaker, and I'm like doing CPR, compressions. I have no medical supplies with me. And within 3 or 4 minutes, another Hatzalah volunteer comes out. This guy, Sergey, a volunteer of ours, he's a paramedic. And he actually works in the airport, so he ran there with a defibrillator and other equipment. And we started professional CPR now. We had some equipment. And within a few minutes, other people came. 35 minutes later, I realized that we have a whole crew there. She had a line, she had intubation, she had everything professional. And I realized that I'm going to miss my flight. So I said, guys, you can manage yourself, right? They said, yes. I ran to the security. They had all my stuff packed up so nicely. And they came, all the guys from security says, you don't have to go through security, just go through. And I just ran to the plane. I got here in time. And when I got into the plane, I was sitting down. The paramedic calls me up. He says, we got a pulse back, and she's on the way to the hospital. So it was a great feeling to know. And I as I was leaving, so as he called me, and I said, by the way, where is she from? This woman, she said, she's from Nazareth. She's an Arab. And her son and daughter-in-law were there, of course. And I gave him a hug. Right before I left, I gave him a hug and I said, I hope she does well. And they said, thank you for working on my mother. Because they realized that it was like a second after this woman got a heart attack. And that's the whole idea, really, of United Hatzalah. If you think about Hatzalah, it's very much like Uber. And it's hard to, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, when I had this vision when I was a kid, I'll explain to you how this whole thing happened. But I was trying to explain people where my vision is going to. I said, I want to have a 90-second response to every emergency happening in Israel. And people said, Ellie, you're nuts, you're crazy, it's never going to happen. They said, ambulance, it takes 20 minutes to come. I said, if we have more and more and more volunteers everywhere, you will get to a 90-second response. And it was very hard to explain to people. But today, I travel all around the world, including here in London, and I use Uber or Lyft or any other app to call for transportation. And when I'm in New York, I stay in 51st Street and 2nd Avenue. It's a very busy place. And I'm in the 8th floor, sorry. So I call Lyft. I like using Lyft. Somehow I got connected to Lyft and I press Lyft. Half the times I cancel them because they come too quick. You know that feeling? Like you're not ready for them yet. I have to get the elevator or something, and then they're going to charge me for that 5 minutes waiting. So I realized Hatzalah is exactly the same thing. We're the real Uber. We're the crowdsource volunteers who will respond to anyone who needs our help, no matter where we are, no matter if we're on vacation or playing golf, or we're busy in a lawsuit fighting against another case, and in a case in court. And we had a case like that just a few years ago, where one of our volunteers, he's a lawyer, and he was actually fighting in a case, and it was a very hard case, and it was a divorce. So it was a lot of emotions there, and he was representing the husband, and the wife had a lawyer representing a lawyer representing her, and that other lawyer was a very, very tough guy, and they were having a very, very difficult guy. He was like one of the best lawyers, and he had a heart attack. While this other lawyer had a heart attack while this case was going on, and the lawyer of our volunteer saw this happen. He runs over and he starts working on him, and he saved his life. Can you imagine? He was fired right away, by the way. But I asked him later, I said to him later, his name is Dror. I said, Dror, this guy's your enemy now. He's like your enemy, you're saving him. You could have won the case. And the beauty part about it is that we put everything aside, no matter if now we're treating a Muslim, I'm Jewish, we don't look at it. We don't care who you're treating. We care we're treating human beings. And it could be he's fighting you in court for a year or two. He's your enemy every day when he can't get there, but he's not your enemy when he needs your help. And that's the idea of United Hatzalah. So I'll go back 30 years. It's actually now 30 years. I was 16 years old. I was already a volunteer for a year at the back of an ambulance. And I used to go out to calls probably almost every day. I used to go out in the back of the ambulance. I was a terrible student. I never really graduated any school. And I was kicked out of kindergarten even. So when I was in the back of the ambulance, I felt terrific. All I wanted is to save someone's life. That's all I wanted. And I was helping a lot of people. Getting into, serving in the back of an ambulance is a lot of adrenaline, and you get a lot of satisfaction. But my dream was to see someone dead coming back to life. That's all I wanted to see, because I had that terrible trauma I suffered when I was a child. And I was 6 years old when I saw a bus blow up in front of my eyes. I was coming back from school on a Friday afternoon, and that bus just stopped at the bus stop and blew up. And I saw people get hurt and killed, and that trauma carried me for many years. And I said to myself, when I grow up, I want to save someone. So I was thinking, I'm going to save someone in an ambulance. And after almost a year and a half in the back of an ambulance, I never even got to save one person. And I realized every time we used to go out to call, I used to write down the time we received the call and the time we arrived there. And in an average response time, it was 17 minutes. So if you would take a person that's not breathing and make him wait for 17 minutes, there was no chance you'll get to him and save his life. And we had many, many incidents that we had people have heart attacks or strokes or bad accidents, and we never got to save these people. Other people we helped and probably saved, but people that we didn't bring back to life. And then we had an incident of a 7-year-old boy who was choking while he was eating lunch, and he choked on a sausage. And his mother realized that he's not breathing and he's blue, and she called right away for an ambulance, screaming, "Please come fast, my son's choking." And it's the worst feeling in the world to know you're in the back of an ambulance, but you have to drive a very long way to save a child choking. And we were going from the one side of town to another side of town. We were the only ambulance available in the city. And by the time we got there, it was 21 minutes. And when we ran upstairs, we just heard crying and screaming. We didn't even have to ask for the address. We heard people screaming from the building, so we knew we'd run upstairs. And when we started working on this child, a doctor who was walking his dog realized an ambulance is here. In Israel, everyone likes helping. They see people need help. They go helping. It's not like New York City. Everyone's busy and everything. And here, everyone's busy. It's a small city. Jerusalem has small neighborhoods. So the doctor ran up to help, and he's with his dog. And he saw the situation, and he says, "How could I help? I'm a doctor." We told him what happened, and he's like, he checks the boy, and after a few minutes of working with us, he says, "Just bring a sheet to cover him. You have nothing to do." And that moment was the worst moment of my life, because I just realized I had a epiphany, it's called in English. I'm Israeli, so forgive my English. I had an epiphany. I said to myself, this kid was waiting for so long for us to help save his life, while this doctor was just around the block. And no one thought of calling a doctor. No one ran around the streets, "Who's a doctor?" Why didn't they just scream in the streets for help, for a doctor or a paramedic or some nurse or something? And they were waiting for us, thinking we're going to be there fast enough. And that moment I realized that, you know what? Ambulances don't save lives. People save lives. And if we get the people from the ambulances to respond to calls before the ambulance arrives, we will get to save people. And I decided to go ahead and get a group of volunteers who were willing to go ahead and stop everything they do and run Save Lives while the ambulance is on traffic, on the way. And right away, I got all my friends in. Every single friend of mine, was 15 friends who were volunteers in the back of the ambulance. They all knew the situation. And they all said, "Let's do it." And then I went to my friends. I said, the only problem we have, the obstacle we have, is how to get the emergency calls routed to us. Because 911 or 999 right here, or every emergency center, they get a call. They keep it to themselves. They don't broadcast it in the radio or something. They don't put it out to the public. I said, I have to get somehow them to convince them to give me the emergency calls. So I went to them and I said, "Listen, I have this idea. I have 15 volunteers. We want to respond." This guy, I met the head of the union, actually, the strongest guy of the whole ambulance station. He heard my idea. He said, "It's the stupidest idea. This is not going to happen. When someone calls for help, he must get an ambulance. No one's going to come before an ambulance. This is not going to happen. Liability and other things, So I said to him, "Listen, this is a dream of mine to save a life. I'm in a year and a half of volunteering in the back of an ambulance, and I never saved even one person." I said to him, "All I need from you is you should share the information with me. I don't want money from you or nothing." And I found myself very, very quickly outside of the building. And he says, "Never come back to me." So now I was stuck. What do I do now? How do I get the medical information of every emergency coming to me? So in Israel, we invented, I love talking about Israeli inventions, but the biggest invention we ever invented was called chutzpah. So I don't know how to say chutzpah in English, but you need some, I don't know how to say it in English.
But it's a bit like cheek, I guess.
Cheek?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Polite way of saying it, I guess.
I said to my friends, listen, they don't want to share the calls. We're going to get the calls without their permission. And my friend actually was going to America. I said, listen, I have some bar mitzvah money left. I'm going to get some other money from friends. I need you to go to Radio Shack in New York and buy 2 police scanners. These little police, you could tap into any emergency calls and listen into everything they say. So we're going to it's like in the gray area, listen to their emergency calls. And my friend says, are you sure you really? I said, I'm 16 and a half years old. No one's going to put me in jail for listening to it. So that's what I did, and we actually bought 2 police scanners. It was a lot of money then, $700 each, I still remember. They were good ones. You could actually listen to everywhere. You could listen to the Israeli army. That's how good it was. And we sneaked it into Israel. And we started listening into the calls. And the first emergency call that I actually heard, and I responded, was a man who was hit by a car. And I was around the block. My father had a little bookshop, and I used to help my father in the bookshop. And I just ran out, and I got to a person who was on the floor. He was hit by a car. People were surrounding him. They didn't know what to do. They were just waiting for an ambulance. And I said, I'm an EMT, which is an emergency medical technician. And I moved him aside, and I checked him, and I saw he's breathing, but he's not conscious. And he's bleeding from a few parts of his body, but the most serious place is from his neck. And if I must stop his bleeding, but I had no bandages on me. So I took my yarmulke off my head, and I folded it, and I just pushed it in as much as I could in order to stop the bleeding. And a long time later, an ambulance arrived, and they took him to the hospital, and I wasn't sure what's going to happen. 2 days later, I get a phone call. This person says, are you Eli Beer? I said, yes. He says, well, my father was treated by you 2 days ago, and he woke up this morning at Hadassah Hospital. And we told him a story how a kid came and saved his life. He would like to meet you and thank you for saving his life. And that was the best phone call I ever got in my life. And I started crying, and I said to the person, could I come over to the hospital? He said, of course. So we actually, my father and I went to the hospital, and we met this guy. He was laying in his bed, very, very weak. And he gave me this great hug, this best hug. Israelis love to hug and to kiss. But this was the best hug I ever got. And he was very weak, but when he took his hands off me, he had a number on his hand. And that, looking at this man, just realizing I just saved a man who was in a Holocaust, changed my life. And that's, every person has a point in your life that you change. And when I saw that, my life changed. And I said to myself, if I was able to save one person, I could probably save another person. And I had a dream of saving one person, but you get addicted. And that was my addiction point. So I said I was crying, of course, and all of a sudden Professor Rifkin from Hadassah comes into the room, and he says, what's going on? They told him. She says, oh, you're the boy who stopped his bleeding? He's a very rough guy. So I said to him, yes. He says, and I was proud of myself. He says, well, this man was on Coumadine, which is a blood thinner. In 2 minutes, he would have been dead if he didn't stop his bleeding. But I just want to recommend you for next time, don't use your yarmulke to stop bleeding. He started making fun of me like as a joke. He says, you want to use a yarmulke to wear it for religious reasons, to take hot stuff out of the oven if you want to use it, that's fine. But don't use it for bleeding or anything. See, so I went ahead and I had a few more shekels left from my bar mitzvah. And I went and bought some bandages and put a kit together. And I said to myself, you know what? We're not going to only carry these walkie-talkies. We're going to also have medical equipment with us. And then a few months later, we realized we were saving people all the time, heart attacks and other events, drowning, stuff, because we were getting there so quick. And we were actually competing with each other, who's going to get there faster. So I had my father's car. My father was a businessman, and I didn't have a car. I was a young kid. I used to drive my father to work and then say, tough luck, I'm taking the car, I have emergencies to deal with. And I used to leave him without a car all day and then pick him up at night to take him back home. And then I realized that cars are great because you're a local. An ambulance comes from far, and we're a bunch of cars. So we're really like Uber, right? We didn't know what Uber is. But we were like the local ambulances. Every car of ours were like equipped like an ambulance because we were spread all around. But we would get stuck in traffic many times. We couldn't find parking. We would get tickets because we would park in the middle of the street, and then Israelis would start breaking down our mirrors, and they would get upset, because we had emergencies, we didn't know where to park. And then I realized these pizza delivery guys in Israel, they're delivering pizza with motorcycles. And they want to get good tips. Israel, you give tips if you get good service. And I don't know about England, but in America, you tip no matter what. Bad service or good service, you never leave without a tip. In Israel, only if you get good service. And these pizza guys, they finished the army. They did 3 years in the army. They want to go to Indonesia. They want to go to trips around the world for a couple of months. They need some money, so they go work in these deliveries. And they want to get some tips from people, so they really take that pizza while it's really boiling. They put it in the back. They drive through the traffic. They go on the sidewalks. They hit people on the way, but they get there in time to deliver the pizza when it's still very, very hot. I said, if these guys get there quick enough to deliver a hot pizza and get a big tip, we could change the model and move that car into a motorcycle. These ambulances, turn them into motorcycle ambulances. And this was the first ones in the world. No one ever did this before. And that was the second chutzpah we ever did, because my friend said, we need to get permission to do this. I said, what, are you crazy? We're not going to ask for permission. It's always better to ask in Israel for forgiveness than for permission. And we actually build these motorcycles, and we turn them into make it look so official. So police wouldn't even imagine it's not official. So we even put official ambulance motorcycle thing. And our volunteers were like driving around this all day, and they went to work with it, they went home, and I was a young boy, but I started calling my cousins in America, listen, your father passed away a while back, you should donate a motorcycle, I'll put your father's name on the motorcycle. My cousin says, what is a motorcycle? I said, it's like an ambulance. You remember you donated an ambulance years ago? Ambulance are passé, now it's motorcycles. And people said, well, that's a great idea. And I actually got my cousins to start donating these motorcycles with their names on. And I used to call them up. It was very expensive to call then and say, oh, your motorcycle just saved someone's life, with stories that just happened. And that's how I started this whole organization. And since then, we started with 15 volunteers. It started growing. It was mostly in the Orthodox communities, in the Jewish Orthodox communities. And secular Jews started joining us, which was incredible. Because Jews never get along with other Jews. We can get along with other nations, but Jews and Jews, very, very hard. So we got religious Jews, and then the different types of religious Jews, and then secular Jews, and Jews who don't believe in anything, like atheists, and also they're together in one room studying to save lives. And it's incredible the amount of love I found out there is in the world just by watching these courses. People trained for months to be volunteers of Hatzalah. We had thousands of people who wanted to join us. It was like, it became viral, and we couldn't even handle so many people. People actually harass us to join in. We couldn't join in so many people because it cost a lot of money to train them and get the medical supplies. And then one day I get a phone call, a guy by the name of Muhammad Asli with Murad Aliyan. They call me up. They said they want to meet me. I said, what is it about? They say, we want to meet because we want to talk about joining Hezbollah. They couldn't pronounce it because they're Arabs. They have a different slang of speech. And I thought they said Hezbollah. So I was like, hello? Are you sure you called the right number? So he said, no, Hezbollah. I said, oh, okay. So we met, and he told me the story about his father waiting for almost an hour for help when his father had a heart attack and lived in East Jerusalem in Abu Tor. And he said to me, if I could have saved my father, if I would have knew what to do, I could have saved my father. I want to study to become a Hatzalah volunteer, and I want to save lives. And when I heard that, and his father passed away, of course, I heard that. I said, you know what? When I started this organization, it was all about saving people. It wasn't about saving Jews. So I said the biggest Jewish thing in the world could be is training everyone and becoming a much wider organization. And I said to them, ahlan wa sahlan, join us. And it was incredible because we all of a sudden met people we never met before. And we put them in one room together with Hasidim, Hasidic Jews and secular Jews, and settlers, and they're all studying together for months. And it just turned into be such a beautiful thing. So we decided one day to just change the name from Hatzalah to United Hatzalah. And I realized that if I want to get to a 90-second response time, you need to be united. And now we have 6,000 volunteers throughout Israel. Majority of our volunteers use their own cars because we can't give everyone ambucycles, but we have 1,000 ambucycles spread all around Israel. We have around 250 bicycles, electric bicycles. They drive all day with it. They go to work with it. They go everywhere they go. We have an app that knows how to locate the closest to every emergency. So much more sophisticated than Uber. The closest 5 people get an alert within 3 seconds on any emergency happening nearby them. And that's how I saved a life because I heard the screaming, but the other volunteers got that alert coming to their phone. That's how they knew where to run to. And a lot more sophisticated things. We do incredible stuff. It's all volunteer, 6,000 people in Israel. Not one of them get paid for running and saving someone's life. And that's the beautiful part about it. And you'll probably have a lot of questions, so I'm going to leave it by that and just say that I'm very proud because, and I'm sure you're going to have some questions about that. I started on my own in my family, but my wife and kids my kids were little they weren't even born when I started. And my wife wasn't even, actually I always say my wife's my second wife because I married her after I was married to Hatzalah. So, but when she joined Hatzalah, when I joined Hatzalah many, many years ago, I got married and she was always jealous. I would come home happy with such a great feeling. I just saved someone, I just helped someone. And now I have my wife and 3 kids and a son-in-law all volunteering in Hatzalah. So it's became one big volunteer organization in my home. So that's it. And I'm very proud of it. So since we started, we treated over 3.5 million people. And we have a lot more to do. So thank you so much for listening to me.
This guy's amazing, so... I think it massively puts into perspective what we do for a living and how importantly we take our jobs. You said, obviously, you talked about that first time you went to see the ambulance service and how they kind of laughed you out the building. How's your relationship now with the Israeli ambulance service and how's that developed over time?
Very bad. Actually, I'm very proud of it. First of all, they do wonderful work, and I can say we can't do without them because at the end of the day, they need a transfer to the hospital. Today, we work with about 100 ambulance services in Israel. Many years ago, they were almost the only ones. Now they have a lot of ambulance organizations in Israel because they all charge for service. We're the only ones who don't charge for service. So we actually made arrangements with Magen David Adom, Netali, Shachal, the big ambulance companies. Every time they have an emergency call, they should share with us, and we'll respond till they show up. So it works beautifully on the field, 99.9% of the time. Of course, they have some ego problems between all of us because we're Israeli. And we are paramedics. They always have a joke between, you know what the difference between God and a paramedic? God doesn't think he's a paramedic. So I always say we have a bunch of paramedics in a field sometimes, but it works really nice in the field. We have some, they're a great organization, we're a great organization, but we are getting a lot of publicity. And we're now in 21 countries, so a lot of people are talking about us. So in the last 5 years, they started copying our model. So it's actually, a lot of people said, oh, look at this, they bought motorcycles now, they bought this. I actually think it's the greatest thing. When the largest organization in Israel start copying you, you know you're doing the right thing. So the relationship is not the best, but it's actually good. The competition is terrific.
Okay. Obviously, you said the service is free. I mean, here we have a free NHS. It's publicly funded, but how is it funded? You said it's. I think you mentioned donations.
Yeah, so it's very different here, and it's different than America and Israel. America, you can pay $2,500 for an ambulance. So if you call in the city in Manhattan and you have to go to hospital, they charge you for every little thing they do. You have insurance, of course, but your deductible will be a few $100s if you have insurance. In Israel, it could cost you hundreds of dollars as well. If you don't get admitted in the hospital, you pay from your own pocket. The insurance will not reimburse you for the ambulance. We decided when we started this that this would be 100% free. No tips allowed and no donations allowed on the field. Because we want people to feel free to call us no matter what happens to them. Many people cannot afford an ambulance, so they know they could depend upon us. We'll come to them anytime. We only get donations. So 70% of our donations come from abroad, and 30% of our donations come from Israelis, which is incredible. Our budget is about $25 million a year now to operate. We treat over 300,000 people a year, a lot more than that now. So it's medicine, it's defibrillation, it's training, it's insurance, it's motorcycles, it's everything else that we need. So everything comes from donations. We have about 60% of that, 70% comes from America, and the rest comes from around the world. And that's why I'm here in London trying to get more people from England to support. And that's why Asaf's here, our general from here, the one in charge of all our fundraising here in London. And Michael Brown is listening to me, probably heard me a few times before, who runs our U.S., Canada, and England. He's vice president of the organization.
You mentioned training amongst those things you have to pay for. I presume if your volunteers are coming from all walks of life, they must do quite a lot of training in order to be able to be a first responder. What goes into that?
It's incredible because people sometimes, like I came with no education, so forgive me, here everyone's educated, right? So I came with no education. I never spoke English. I spoke English because my parents were American, but I never read or wrote English. I had to learn a lot on my own. I grew up in a very, very religious school, so they didn't teach us anything so when I was even dismissed from school because I was a naughty kid, I actually went to study this, and it was very hard for me because a lot of terms were in English and everything else. People that come to study with us could be professors I have a professor in IDC who's a deputy dean of the school, of business school and entrepreneurship there. Yaron Timor, he's a genius. He had to go for 7 months to school together with guys who are taxi drivers and regular Israelis who are just simple people who are working hard for a living. And he's a professor in a university. And they sat in a room and they learned together. It was incredible. And that's what we do to old people. It's a hard job to learn this because most of these people are busy. They have a job, but twice a week they come in the evening and they study.
So, yes, I mean, it's quite amazing. And the ambucycle is presumably funded in a similar way from donations. I mean, they must be pretty expensive. How much does it cost to put a mobile ambucycle?
I think it's about 27 or 28,000 pounds, which includes all the medical supplies in it. It has defibrillator in the back. It has everything an ambulance has in the back of that, and also includes the insurance and maintenance for 3 years. The beautiful part about it goes out to about 800 calls a year. So when someone sponsors it, it's so easy for us to get them to just continue. I was in a school last week in Los Angeles, a Jewish school, and I spoke in front of the whole school. The kids were fascinated, and they decided that they're going to raise money for an ambucycle. Within 3 days, they raised money for an ambucycle. Kids, age of 8 till 15. And then they're going to get updates about it all the time. So we get people to sponsor, and they get updates on it, and they get to see it if they ever come.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Asaf told me that you're hoping that you're in talks about launching in Manchester, which is obviously very exciting to be in the UK. What's the idea? What's the idea in the UK about how it would work? My understanding is in Israel that the emergency response teams, it's not like there's a central number. It's not like you call 999, you call who you're looking to reach. Will there be a United Hatzalah number? How will people...
So thank you for asking that question. You know, they had a very big terror attack in Manchester a couple of years ago, and a few people there heard of what we do in Israel. It's amazing if you think about it. In America, in Sri Lanka, and many other places where they had terror attacks, and it could happen anywhere, God forbid it should stop, it should not happen again. But when it does, the emergency service can't cope with emergencies like that. But when you have hundreds of people who are trained and they deal with everyday emergencies all of a sudden, all these people run to save people. We save in these big events many people that otherwise would not be saved because emergencies would not cope with an emergency like that. So someone contacted me from Manchester, Mark Davies. He's a supporter of ours in Israel. And he's like, Ellie, we need to do this in Manchester. So we did it in many other countries, and a few countries in South America and other places. But I said to him, you know what, I can't deal with it. I'll help you with everything. We'll help you start it. We'll help you everything. But you need to find people to do it there. And I'll tell you, honestly, we can't buy these walkie-talkies in Radio Shack because they shut down. And we're not going to do this whole shtick with the radio, with the walkie-talkies. You need to get to an organization. You need to get an arrangement with the 999 of the city. And I came to Manchester and I met the executive of the city. They didn't have a mayor, I think. They had an executive, or I don't know what. I met him and he got so excited about the idea. Then he got other people, and they're ready to launch soon. They want to start the first course soon. So it's going to be starting, hopefully, in Manchester. My next city is not going to be London. It's too difficult here. I'm going to New York. We're working on New York now. Once it's in New York, it's going to go viral everywhere.
But we were chatting earlier, and my understanding is New York, that there were already Hatzalah communities in New York, in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Before Israel, but they were not joined up. They were. So
they have local Hatzalah organizations in New York already by the Jewish community, but it's only for their community. It's like the mostly Orthodox Jewish communities, but they don't serve outside of that community. I want to go ahead and start something very similar to what we're doing in Manchester. We did it in Jersey City now. We have 220 volunteers in Jersey City. We lowered response time to 2 minutes and 35 seconds. And they go out to calls every day and save people. Wow, in Jersey City, but it works together with the 911, which is the emergency call. Mm-hmm. So they dispatch our emergencies for us, so we don't have to build a parallel dispatch to what, so much easier to do it that way.
I just can't get over the fact that you came up with this or that you had the drive to do this when you were 16 and a half years old. Who in your life did you have as a mentor or an inspiration or someone that, that drove you to be this ambitious?
Look, I grew up in Beit Vegan. I don't know if anyone here knows Beit Vegan. It's a little neighborhood in Jerusalem. We didn't have money at home. My family were working hard, my parents. My father was an incredible person, and I really learned a lot from him because my father, he was living in America as a child. He was born in America, fourth generation. And he, during the Holocaust, went ahead and he said, he went as a few years during the Holocaust helping raise money to save Jewish people running away from Europe. And I remember the stories my father used to tell me, horror stories about Jewish people kicking him out of their stores. And they said, the problems in Europe are not our problem. And my father was crying when he told me the stories. And I remember he used to tell me that when I think about my father, so I used to hear him say that he never gave up. And he used to go and he said, if I could save one more person.
I just think it's incredible what you've achieved. You must be, your father would be incredibly proud. You must have a number of proud moments. You talked about the moment that you obviously saved that first life. What's your proudest moment in the history of Hatzalah? Because I enjoy making people cry. So. Let's get some more emotional moments out of you.
No, I'll tell you the truth, you actually made me cry.
I have to say, I can share with you that when I asked Eli if he would come to Mishcon to talk, he had one request before he would agree to come, and that was that he wanted to have coffee with the leader of our organization. So I arranged coffee for him with Kevin Gold, and we sat down in reception with Patrick, and Eli made Kevin Gold cry. So I feel like that I have made Eli cry. Great achievement.
I usually don't. You heard me many times. I never cry. You're talking about how I got inspiration. My father was my inspiration, really. Hearing the stories about his childhood, trying to save people. That I could guarantee you that I was born in Israel. Both my parents had no one in their family killed in the Holocaust. They had no family there. But they cared. And what they did, it was something that inspired me when I grew up. And I'll tell you, a proud moment, I'll tell you something, was I have my oldest daughter, she's 23 years old. She's incredible. Her name is Abigail. And so Abigail is actually in Los Angeles now. She volunteers with kids with cancer. She finished her degree in university, the first one in my family. And what happened was she decided when she was 17 to become a volunteer of Hatzalah. And she did the course, and she was incredible. And the funny part is she's so happy when I leave the country, she takes my car, she could respond with lights and sirens. My car has the authorization to go through, traffic with everything. And she goes out to so many emergencies. But a few weeks ago, when she graduated her university in Ariel, she went to vacation with her friend who also is a volunteer of Hatzalah, 2 girls. They went alone to Sinai. It wasn't my recommended vacation for her, but she's 23. I can't say anything to her anymore. And on the way to Sinai, she gets a call on her app that some lady is giving birth. This isn't in the desert. She's in the desert next to Mitzpeh Ramon. If someone knows the area, it's very far in towards Egypt. And she gets a call on the app saying someone's giving birth. She thought it was a mistake. She calls a dispatch in Jerusalem. She says, "Is this real?" They said, "Yes, it's real." So they said, "Just follow the GPS." And she follows 4 miles. She finds a car on the side of the road, an Arabic guy she right away recognized. He's an old car. He's screaming. He saw her with the red cherry on. He says, come fast. And she's like, okay, where do I go? And he says, follow me. And he gets off the road and she starts following him and she's scared. Her and a friend, this is nighttime. And she calls Hatzalah and she says, could you follow me in my GPS? Because I'm like scared where I'm going with this guy. And finally he stops next to like this old shack and he runs and she runs after him and she sees this woman on the floor starting, her delivering a baby. So she puts on her gloves right away and she starts taking care of this woman. She sees the baby's like coming out with the umbilical cord around the neck. And she's like, right away, she starts taking care of the baby. She releases the baby's neck. Baby flies out and she delivered a healthy baby boy.
It's amazing.
And this woman was a Bedouin Arab woman. And my daughter was so proud of this. And she was holding the baby and they took a picture, of course, because that's part of the procedures. When you have a baby, when you deliver a baby, we deliver 3 babies a day. And whenever we do it, we always like to take a picture with the baby because that's really a proud moment. And my daughter she called me up, she says, Abba, I just delivered an Arab baby in the middle of the desert. And the head of the whole village came to thank me and he was giving me candy and they didn't want me to leave. They said, stay here. They wanted to give me a tent with my friends to stay overnight. And they gave me coffee and everything. And the guy says to her, the head of the thing, he says to me in front of everyone, he says, let me ask you, you were a Jewish girl with your friend. Weren't you scared to come here? She says, very, very. So they were laughing. They said, it's okay. You know what? We're never going to forget this, that 2 Jewish girls came to our place and delivered a baby. A week later, she was back in Israel after a vacation. She's in the central bus station in Tachana Merkazit, which is the old central bus station in Tel Aviv. She was at a wedding of a friend of hers. Coming back, another emergency call of a Sudanian woman who is giving birth, waiting for help. And the ambulance is, The ambulance came, didn't really want to take her because no insurance, they don't have legal papers and anything. And my daughter says, you know what, I'll take care. They call Hatzalah ambulance, came right away. We have a few ambulances. And my daughter took her to the hospital. On the way, she delivered a baby of this woman. And then 3 days later, a Haredi woman, ultra Orthodox, 4 babies. It's in 2 weeks, she delivered 4 babies. And I said to myself, you know what? That's what I'm proud of. That's really, it's like my kids are taking me over. I don't have to go out to calls anymore.
It's amazing. I could ask Ellie questions all day. I'm really conscious of the time. So I don't know if anybody wants to ask any questions themselves. Otherwise, I'm quite happy to keep asking. Anyone got anything in particular?
Technical question.
Yes.
You said that five of the volunteers are contacted.
Yeah.
So do they all go? Or do they then decide between them? How does it work?
So first of all, it matters what call. Sometimes it's 10, 20. It matters how big the emergency is and how many people you need. So the minimum is 5 responders get the call. If we need 2, the first 2, the press, it's like that game you have on TV, the first one that presses, they respond. We have a fight over emergencies. The more work they get, the more engaged they are with the organization. So we have 2 or 3 volunteers to every emergency. Yeah.
This is a really practical question. It seems, in retrospect, a very simple idea that a bike will get there quicker than an ambulance. Why did the commercial ambulance services never think of that?
Okay, so I have a few answers for that. First of all, it never existed before, and the commercial ambulance services are run by unions. And not only, I think here too, but most of their work was to make sure the comfort of their employees are met to their standards, meaning they have rooms for resting, they have showers, TVs, screens, and everything else, and ambulances will be comfortable enough and everything else. Motorcycle is not a comfortable vehicle for anyone. And this would have been actually something against their rules. No, by the way, that's why we're having a hard time in New York. When I started the motorcycles in Israel, they went against us. They said that we're going to kill people with them. People are going to get hurt from them. They tried stopping us in the first place. So now they're doing it because it just became so popular. When I gave my TED Talk about 7 years ago, it just became so viral around the world. People said, why aren't you having these motorcycles? So they started thinking about getting it. But for years, they were not getting it. The same way New York City doesn't have it, or here. I mean, some here, now they have it here, but it doesn't operate the same way we do it. It's not, let me tell you this, it's not so much fun riding around it. It's fun for the first day maybe, or the first few hours, but when you start driving around in the heat with this helmet and the jacket, and the winter and the cold weather and the wet weather, it's very uncomfortable. And you can't pay enough, any employee, to drive around with this.
I saw, well, you were talking about your wife also volunteers for the organization, and we were emailing before the session, and you mentioned, one of the other innovative things I think that you guys are doing is that Hatzalah now has a psycho-trauma unit and dispatches mental health professionals as well to certain emergencies. How did that come about? Because I think your wife was involved somehow.
My wife was involved with another thing. This one, actually, right now, as we're talking, they have an award giving to the woman who started it, Miriam Ballin. She was a volunteer of ours, and she used to go out to calls, and she saw people traumatized. And this happens everywhere in the world, not only in Israel. It could be a fire that people got killed, or accident, or any trauma that something happens, or someone died in the house and the children see. People observe terrible things and develop later on post-traumatic stress, which could affect the whole life. And people commit suicide because of things like that, and many problems happen. Nowhere in the world they treat these problems. And she was in a terror attack, and she saw in Jerusalem, and she saw all the people that were physically injured were treated, and the people who were emotionally injured, they just went home. So she said, Ellie, they have a method that she learned. She was a little of a psychologist. She said they have a technique that you can actually treat people to snap them out of any post-traumatic stress in the future. It's a 15-minute treatment with tapping them, and I don't know if you ever learned about it. I never learned about it before. And she said, if we learn this, how to do this, we could start a whole new response team to save people's life emotionally. And when she convinced me to do it, and I said, okay, let's start at a small pilot, and it worked incredibly. And now we have 500 responders. Every day we send them to different events, which is incredible, and they really make a difference. And we had a story last week, a few weeks ago. I shared it by email. Whoever gets my emails about this young girl, 15 years old, from Baltimore. She came to Israel. She was doing these glides, how do you call it? What's it called? Hang gliding. And she's 15 years old with a whole family. Each one had a guide, and they had an accident, and they smashed into the mountain. And she would try to hold on not to fall. And the guide was tied up to her, and he was killed on the spot. He was talking to her for a few minutes, 2 minutes, and then when they realized where she is, they called for help. And we had a Tzala volunteer within 3.5 minutes near her side. Thank God saved her life. But she was with a guy stuck, was killed. She was traumatized. Her brothers and sisters who were there traumatized. We went and sent about 12 people to treat the whole family. And they're back in Baltimore, but the parents told me that this is what saved the family. Of course, the girl was saved, but the whole family would have been traumatized forever. And this is the beautiful part about this. And Miriam is actually getting an award from a guy, Sylvan Adams in Israel, who's giving this award for Olim Chadashim, who came up with ideas.
It's amazing.
Yeah. What?
You said the treatment's 15 minutes.
It's about 15 minutes. Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's an amazing thing. And I think that's I didn't focus enough. I talk about Atzela. It's fascinating enough to talk only about Atzela, and I forget about all the rest. We have other programs we do. Elderly people who live alone, we visit them once a week and take vital signs of all their body vital signs, and check their medications. And we prevent unnecessary death from these people that live alone who have no family. A lot of different programs that help preventing death from people.
I mean, it's incredible. I mean, we're in England, we're not in Israel. If people here are, other than spreading the word about what you're doing, is there any other way that Mishcon staff can do anything to get involved to support
First of all,
the charity?
I checked in Israel, and I checked all around Israel. I didn't see even one Mishcon ambucycle. Not even one. I checked. I asked all my staff, if you see an ambucycle, see if it says Mishcon on it. That's number one. It was a hint. It could be like a project for Mishcon. It doesn't have to be. It's the beautiful part about it, since it's not political. We have Jews and Arabs working together. It could be actually a very interesting thing. And I know Mishcon has a lot of clients in Israel. Actually, I met a client I can't expose, but that she uses Mishcon for a very big deal she's doing. She says, oh, I know. I said, I'm speaking here. So in any case, it could be a great thing. And spreading the word is also a good thing. We would like to build our friendship organization and also other things like our organization in Manchester and eventually here. So it's always good to be with the best firm in England. And to be connected to this firm is always good, So this relationship should grow and grow, and hopefully, who knows what's going to be. And if you know people who go to Israel, send them over to our, to meet us. We need help. We need more ambassadors.
Well, thank you so much for coming in. I thought that was amazing. I hope everyone else did too. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. And Asaf, just say hello. Just say who you are. Asaf is a great guy. He's actually helping us tremendously here in London, in England. And we're having this gala of 250 people. It's not a gala. It's really a dinner. It's a dinner, so if anyone's hungry, you're invited at 6. When is it? Where is it?
At St. Pancras Renaissance.
Yeah, 6 o'clock?
I started thinking, stop inviting people.
6:30. I'm Israeli. We just invite for. And if everyone wants to come to Shabbat dinner at our home in Jerusalem, that's how I am, you know.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks.
you.